Knives are another set of invaluable tools that greatly help in your bookbinding projects, especially when you're covering your book in leather. You can use almost any sharp knife to cut a piece of paper or leather, but specialized paring knives are what are usually used to thin your piece in key places to properly mold itself in the various folds and creases that the book structure has. Leather paring and handling the knives for the job are one of those techniques that really take some time to develop. You can read about them, you can see others do it, but in the end you only get the hang of it until you try and maybe ruin some nice pieces of leather in the meantime. Mainly for this reason, please don't consider this video as an instruction to the technique, but rather an introduction or a story from my particular point of view. As always, search and listen for the people with the most experience and preferably masters near you that can actually show you firsthand how things are done. As with many other processes in bookbinding, I didn't have this opportunity, so I delved in on my own without any proper idea of what I was looking for or what I was doing. And given this, my first knives were purchased from a local cobbler supplier where I also got my first pieces of leather. They had these strange curved knives called in Bulgaria cobbler knives. They have an edge only on one side and come in a left or right-handed variation. I purchased two of them for about €4 and began my awkward paring trials when I came home with them. I honed the blades on 2 grades of sandpaper, which grit I don't remember currently. It was a strange novice period then in which I used these knives to pare the corners of my leather pieces, but due to their curve, they only work if you pare towards you rather than outwards. I never saw anyone else do this, and at one point I was starting to consider if I was doing something wrong. Another good indicator of this suspicion was the quality of the steel of these knives. The base is no more than 1.5 mm thick and the edge was getting dull with startling speed. It was a process of constant resharpening and that was honestly getting on my nerves. I still haven't thrown them away though, neither do they sit unused. I've reshaped the edge on one of them to be beveled on both sides and I use it for cutting leather, paper and boards. Basically, I use it for everything. The other is still with the original edge and I use it only on some very specific jobs that require a strange direction of paring, but that doesn't happen very often. So one day I was feeling brave and I ordered a more expensive English style paring knife from abroad. The edge is at an angle, but straight. It's much thicker, higher quality steel than my previous ones and with a steeper edge because of it. It was very sharp when it came, but then it dawned on me that I couldn't possibly do the blasphemy of sharpening it on my dirty old sandpapers. But I'll get to the sharpening details in just a bit. This style of paring knife, the English one, is great for thinning out straight outer pieces. When properly sharpened, it can make your leather ends thin as air, but without careful techniques they'll cut right through it and will ruin your piece. I found it difficult to get to some hard to reach spots or to thin out larger surfaces that are not so close to the end of the leather piece, and for this reason, some months after, I got myself a French style paring knife as well. You'll see this with or without a handle, but the main characteristic is the curved edge of the blade sitting on top of the knife rather than on the side. This particular shape enables working in many directions and is suitable for left or right-handed people all the same. The peculiar blade lets you pare some tight spots and you'll have an easier time thinning out the whole piece from the inside rather than just the outer boundaries. Though keep in mind it's slow and careful work and you should practice a lot. Now back to honing. I found it necessary at some point to buy myself a proper Japanese waterstone, so I ordered with one side being 1000 grit for sharpening the edge and shaping the blade, and the other side 6000 grit for polishing the blade and making it razor sharp. Some use a much smoother surface of for example 10,000 grit, but for now 6000 is quite enough for me. When purchasing whetstones for your knives, make sure to read up on the differences of each brand, as sometimes the 6000 grit of one stone is not the same as the 6000 grit of another from a different manufacturer, so be sure to ask your supplier for more details on the differences of their stones. As the finer grits of these stones are quite soft, it's a good idea to get yourself a flattening stone as well, and maybe a stone holder for good grip when honing. In this video and the others before it, you can see me often adding water to the surface of the stone, but it's also been soaking for at least 10 to 15 minutes in water beforehand. Keep in mind that without proper soaking, you risk damaging your stone or your knife. Usually there are instructions of the stone you bought, how to exactly moisten it and soak it before you use it. I usually use a towel to help absorb the excess water flying about on the table, as well as an ordinary sponge to clean the surface of the stone if it gets too covered in traces of the metal. When honing very sharp blades, keep in mind that even the smallest bumps may affect the quality of your edge, so keep the surface of the stone clean and smooth. The end phase of honing is usually stropping on the inside of a nice thick leather, usually horse or cow. I use a piece of vegetable tan cow, and I don't have a commercial professional strop. Neither do I use honing pastes at the moment. It still works for me, at least for now. Now, some people elevate knife care and sharpening to a science and even an art. I'll leave them to be a wellspring of knowledge, and I'll abstain from giving too much advice on the subject and risk making this video a how-to guide. And that's not because of some ill intent from my part, but rather that I have a more intuitive approach and set my angles on feel rather than set rule. In the end, my knives are sharp and comfortable to work with, at least for me, and I get the performance I'm looking for. I'll leave in the description some guides I've read in the past that might be of help to you as well. Basically, that's the whole problem with these types of knives and learning how to work with them. The fact that they're tools with a high amount of individual character. I've heard many people say that even if razors sharp, they have a hard time using another binder's knives. This works both ways and is the number one reason why you should sharpen your blades yourself. When I'm using the blade I've sharpened, I'm in tune with a particular angle of the edges, the level of sharpness, the weight and the style of my grip. In the end, you must remember that this works as an extension of your hand, and you project your awareness on the tip of the edge rather than on the tip of your fingers. It's one of those almost magical capabilities of the human body and mind to produce such an effect when using a tool. The ability to sharpen and use paring knives is, in the absolute sense of the word, first-hand knowledge. It can be learned through text or word, only from your own first-hand practice. And a fair warning. As with every sharp object, be sure to be absolutely careful when handling them. Keep them away from small children, animals, or even visitors of your workshop, unsuspecting of what they are holding. Even a small bump on the edge penetrates the skin, so have your and your other safety a top priority. I hope I've been helpful to all of you, and I wish you good health in this strange time, and best of luck with your bookbinding projects.